When I was 3 months pregnant, I was left by Jason on a cruise ship that was about to sink. Just because his childhood sweetheart screamed, saying she was afraid of water. I begged him to save me and the child, but he pushed me off the lifeboat. You can swim, right? You won't die. After being rescued from the sea, I lost the child and needed surgery, but I couldn't contact Jason to sign the consent form. Then I saw his childhood sweetheart's Facebook post, "True love is revealed in adversity. Mr. Jason, please guide me." In the picture, they were wrapped in the same blanket, soaked, and barely clothed. After recovering and being discharged, I drove to Tibet. Jason, who hadn't contacted me for a month, called me frantically, "Raina, the wedding dress is ready. Aren't you getting married?" After saying goodbye to the convoy, I turned on my backup phone, and hundreds of missed calls from Jason popped up. When I answered, Jason suppressed his anger and asked, "Raina, where have you been lately? Your phone was unreachable, and you didn't reply to messages. My parents reminded you several times to try on the wedding dress, but they couldn't find you. Do you still want to get married?" Looking at the signed divorce agreement in my hand, I said, "Then let's not get married." "Raina, are you crazy again? You were the one who said we'd just get the certificate without a wedding, and now that the invitations are sent, you don't want to proceed." The background was noisy, and a sweet female voice was comforting him. He calmed down and said gently, "Wait for me, I'll pick you up at home first, and we'll go try on the wedding dress." The wedding dress was custom-made and the most expensive part of this minimalist wedding. I had fantasized countless times about marrying him in the most beautiful dress under the gaze of friends and family. Now, I no longer care. Jason had a new car, a flamboyant royal blue. As I sat in the passenger seat, the sunlight was blinding, so I lowered the sun visor and saw lipstick writing on the mirror, "Mr. Jason loves Miss Ivy." Jason suddenly explained to me, "I replaced the previous car, it was too cheap and didn't match my status. That car was a birthday gift I had saved up for him by scrimping and saving. From the color to the interior, I had carefully chosen everything. Now, like me, it had been replaced by Jason." The car stopped in front of the wedding dress shop, but I didn't get out. "When did you change the shop?" "I remember I booked at A." Jason pulled me out of the car and casually replied, "A friend said this one is better." I preferred silk wedding dresses, but this shop was filled with exaggerated puffball gowns from inside out. Clearly, I had already booked a dress, but it was easily changed because of Ivy's preference. The shop assistant pushed me into the fitting room. The wedding dress fit, but it didn't match my temperament, just like me and Jason now. Jason looked at me, and his eyes rarely showed amazement. But I knew it was just for the dress. He deliberately avoided looking at me, instead imagining how Ivy would look in it. This one, he decided without hesitation. I was silently pulled away by him. After getting in the car, he asked me, "Why the long face when trying on the wedding dress? Didn't you already go out to have fun? Still not happy? How long are you going to be jealous over a small matter?" During last month's cruise trip, when the ship hit a reef and was about to sink, he pushed me off the lifeboat. Just because Ivy was afraid of water, and I had learned to swim 10 years ago. I lost the child, but he found true love and almost forgot about it. Seeing that I didn't speak, he blamed me on his own. "Why did you have to go to the plateau of all places? You were pregnant, and you're not 20 anymore. Why can't you be more responsible? As a mother, you need to be more steady. He's your responsibility now." I said coldly, "Isn't he your responsibility too? When you pushed me off on the day of the cruise accident, did you think about the responsibility in my belly?" Jason turned his face away. "Don't argue with me, I don't buy it. Go get checked to make sure the child is okay." Looking up, we were at the obstetrics and gynecology department. The doctor who performed the abortion for me nervously asked, "Didn't you just have an abortion last month? Is there anything wrong with your body?" Jason was originally lounging on the side looking at his phone, but he was stunned when he heard, "Abortion surgery? Raina, you had an abortion behind my back? When did this happen?" There were many people waiting in the hall, and all eyes were on us. Looking at his betrayed expression, I suddenly remembered 2 months ago, when I first found out I was pregnant, he was happily spinning me around in the obstetrics and gynecology hall. When we got married, we weren't well off, and we didn't have a wedding for many years after getting the certificate. It wasn't until I got pregnant and our financial situation improved that I brought up having a wedding, and he was eager too. But now, his indifference breaks my heart. In 2 months, he found true love, and my love sank to the bottom of the sea. Someone came to mediate, and Jason frowned, pulling me to the stairwell. June 3rd. I looked up and saw the anger on his face freeze. That day, when the cruise ship had an accident, I was left soaking in the cold sea water for 5 hours before being rescued. Meanwhile, he had already confessed his love to Ivy and went home to book a room. Jason's voice softened. Did you get checked after the surgery? Don't harm your body. You went through so much pain and didn't tell me, running off to the plateau alone without proper rest. He reached out to hug my shoulders. Let's still take you for a checkup to avoid any after effects. We can have children in the future. In the empty stairwell, the phone rang with a love song. Jason always used the default ringtone, but for Ivy, he was always willing to do something unique and ceremonial. Ivy was acting coy on the other end of the phone. Does Mr. Jason have time today? I thought about it. The cruise ship accident was really dangerous. To protect myself, I need to learn to swim. Is Mr. Jason willing to be my exclusive coach? I've been afraid of water since I was a child and only trust Mr. Jason. Jason enjoyed this kind of love and unconsciously smiled. After hanging up, he glanced at me with annoyance in his eyes. If it weren't for your miscarriage, there wouldn't be so much trouble. Let's skip today's checkup, I have something urgent. Let my mom bring you another day. He left in a hurry without taking me along. I pushed the door open and walked out, facing the pitiful gazes in the hall, and hailed a taxi. It was already July, and the air was hot and stifling, making it hard to breathe. It felt like drowning in seawater, with a dull pain in my heart, but not a single tear could fall. Back home, Jason's mother called, her voice stern. Raina, I heard about the miscarriage. You're unlucky. In a couple of days, I'll take you for a checkup to make sure it doesn't affect future pregnancies. I didn't respond, and her voice softened a bit. Raina, you grew up without parents, and your uncle and I have treated you like our own daughter. Don't blame me for speaking harshly. A child is gone, but life goes on. I'm also worried about your health. Only if you can give birth will the Ning family have descendants. Once, I sincerely regarded her as my mother, thinking that marrying Jason would give me a complete family again. But now, I see clearly that her grandiose words are all about my womb. Tomorrow, I've arranged for someone to come to the house to perform a ritual for the child, and let Jason come back to see him off. The child is gone, but your relationship must continue. I turned the backup phone upside down on the table, no longer listening, and thus no longer feeling pain. Perhaps because I hadn't eaten all day, when I lay down on the bed, my stomach twisted in pain. I wanted to go downstairs to eat something, but I felt nauseous and had no appetite. This marital home was filled with his presence, making me uncomfortable all over. When I was sweating coldly and seeing stars, I opened my phone to buy some medicine, but I saw that Ivy had updated her Facebook again and even sent me a screenshot. After making sure I saw it, she retracted the message. Mr. Jason is a private swimming coach today. The picture showed a blue swimming pool and Ivy's selfie in a bikini, sitting on Jason's lap. Jason's face wasn't shown, but the tattoo on his abs was very conspicuous. It was the abbreviation of my name, once a symbol of our love. The pain of stomach cramps, along with tinnitus and nausea, surged up, and the phone fell onto the bed. After some time, I recovered a bit and walked to the door, only to hear Jason coming home. He was going upstairs while video calling Ivy. His voice was soft and tender, full of affection. I'm going to Beijing on a business trip next month. Will you come? Ivy laughed, of course. We have to leave traces of our love in every place. I leaned against the door, curling myself up. No one wants to give up someone they love deeply. But when silence and bitterness accumulate, even if it hurts a lot, it's time to leave. Once, Jason and I supported each other, from two small interns who just joined the company to department directors. We had seen Haiching at 4 a.m., worked overtime for half a year, postponed, and finally cancelled the wedding, all for a big project. During the busiest, most tiring, and hardest times, we prepared lunch boxes for each other, but when we had time to open them, the food had already spoiled. We comforted each other, saying that when our careers were successful, before we had the wedding, we would go to the plateau together to see the golden mountains under the sun. But in the end, I went alone. I searched through the embers of love and could no longer see a spark. The next night, I was awakened by the sound of funeral music. Jason's mother had really invited a funeral band to the house and even prepared a memorial tablet for the unborn child. Jason was ordered to keep vigil, but he kept his head down, tapping on his phone screen. When I got closer, I saw that he was chatting with Ivy. "My mom is making a fuss over nothing. It's just a dead child, without even a name, just a fertilized egg, and we still have to keep vigil. It's not like Raina died. I promised to take you to the hot spring villa yesterday, but it can only be next time." I went back to my room, opened the company system, and submitted my resignation. I never liked Haiching before, but because it was Jason's home, I stayed here for many years. I couldn't speak the Haiching dialect, didn't like Haiching food, and was always an outsider who didn't fit in. Now, I've decided to start a new life, so I'll leave. Before leaving, I went to the company to handle my resignation and happened to see Ivy delivering food to Jason. "You got fired," she said with provocation in her eyes. "Serves you right. I told Mr. Jason long ago that the IT industry isn't suitable for women. Look, you've been here for so long, and now you're still leaving." She patted my shoulder. "Sister Raina, it's the same with love. Unsuitable people, even if they get married, will eventually divorce. Moreover, who knows about your marriage besides having a certificate?" I pushed her hand away and walked straight to the door. She thought I didn't know that in the past 2 months, Jason and she had always been secretly staying on the company rooftop. After lunch break at 2, as soon as she delivered food to Jason, he would stay on the rooftop until 4 before coming down to work. He was the deputy director of the marketing department, often on business trips, and rarely came to work. He wasn't at home either, probably out having fun with Ivy. But from now on, he probably won't be smiling anymore. When I resigned, Charles poured his heart out to me, basically saying one thing: he wanted to fire him. Previously, I was the director of the RD department, a key member of the company, and because of our relationship, it was hard to embarrass Jason. But now, since I'm determined to leave, the position of deputy director of the marketing department can be replaced. Charles said, "Victor's son just graduated and returned to the country, and Victor intends for him to take over this director position." I said, "Then let's do it that way." When I walked out the door, it was almost noon, and Jason hurriedly came to clock in for work. Seeing me holding a box, he was first puzzled, then quickly understood. "That's good, the wedding is this Sunday. Go home and rest well. After getting married, don't run around anymore, it'll be easier for you." Ivy stood behind me, her tone intimate. "Does Mr. Jason look down on career-driven women?" She was a makeup artist who flew around to do makeup for people. I knew of 4 or 5 times when Jason told me he was on a business trip, but actually, he was with her. In all the years I've been married to Jason, except for the cruise trip, we never traveled together. The trip to Tibet that I always wanted was postponed again and again. But that time, when I suggested the cruise trip, he didn't refuse, only because Ivy was also there. I looked up and saw Jason smiling brightly, as gentle as when he was in love. "Ivy, you know you're different." This gentleness had long belonged to someone else. My colleagues in the department wanted to hold a farewell party for me, but I didn't want to make a fuss and left quietly, which made Jason even more convinced that I couldn't stay in the industry, had lost the child, was disheartened, and was going home to be a housewife. He indifferently brushed past me, saying only one sentence: "After the wedding, I'll give you everything you want. Stop your nonsense and tricks." I smiled. "Okay, I won't make trouble anymore. And I don't want you anymore." Jason, let's divorce. He sneered. Raina, are you stimulated by being fired? The cost of living in Haicheng is so high. Without a job and divorcing me, won't you have to leave Haicheng in disgrace? He finally tore off his mask, revealing his mean face. I wasn't surprised and left by taxi without giving him a glance. Back home, the wedding dress shop had already delivered the booked dress. The huge puffball skirt filled the wardrobe completely. I stared at the gorgeous hem, but I couldn't remember the joy when I first started preparing for the wedding. With scissors in hand, I cut the hem to pieces and threw it into the trash along with the wedding ring on my finger. The garbage truck took away the white gauze, stained with dirt, just like this chaotic love. I returned to my hometown, Sucheng. Since my parents passed away, I went to Haicheng for school, got married, settled down, and never came back. There was a somewhat old small apartment left. I had only been living there for a couple of days when Jason came to find me. He stood at the door wearing a mask, his neat suit contrasting sharply with the dilapidated stairwell. Why did you come here? Your parents had been dead for so many years, and you never came back. Now, when we're about to have the wedding and it's the busiest time, you come here to slack off. He said it lightly, even with a hint of teasing. The wedding is in a couple of days, and this time I'm here to bring good news to your parents. He sat on the sofa, waiting for me to bring juice. I stepped out of the kitchen and splashed the juice directly on his face. Who gave you the right to call them in-laws? What good news? Jason, I'll tell you for the last time, divorce. I took out the divorce agreement and threw it in front of him. You came just in time, I've already signed it. I was going to mail it to you, but now it's good to clarify in person. Jason wiped the juice off his face, full of disbelief. Just because I accidentally pushed you down, you want to divorce me? Can't our years of relationship outweigh one mistake? He reached out to hug me again. I stepped back in disgust, not wanting to get juice on me. Raina, are you avoiding me? He widened his eyes, hurt in his gaze. I'm also sad that the child is gone. Do you have to stab my heart with divorce? I opened my phone and scrolled through the screenshots from these days. Ivy always did this, sending me messages and then retracting them, wanting to show off her true love in front of me but not daring to let Jason know. Hotel photos, pool photos, even kissing photos. She boasted about the love bento Jason made for her. But I recognized that I had made it myself. Jason said the company cafeteria food wasn't good and he wanted to eat my cooking. Then he turned around and gave the meal I made overnight to Ivy. The hotel they often went to was a famous couples hotel in Haicheng, known for its various styles and luxury. I had a bottle of perfume from that hotel, with a faint rose scent. When Jason gave it to me, he said he smelled it in a hotel while on a business trip and thought it suited me, so he specially asked the staff to buy the full size as a birthday gift for me. But it was actually just a complimentary gift for booking a couple's room, the cheapest kind. Jason wiped off the remaining juice, looked at those photos, his face changing colors, and pursed his lips, saying, Raina, you don't understand, men and women are different. Men's bodies and emotions are separate. Booking a room with her doesn't necessarily mean I love her. In my heart, there's only you, with her, it's just physical. I could hardly imagine how thick-skinned he was to say such things. At this moment, Jason's phone rang with a love song exclusive to Ivy. He looked at me, a bit embarrassed. Answer it, I sneered, show me what physical love is. After the call connected, the background of the old house appeared behind him, and Ivy immediately saw it. Mr. Jason, which rundown house are you in? Come back quickly, I have a surprise for you. She said mysteriously, letting go of her hand covering her chest, revealing herself. Jason's ears turned red instantly, and his eyes involuntarily looked there. Ivy giggled and leaned closer to look at his red ears. The two were like a pair of young lovers, with the air filled with sticky sweetness. I sneered and poured cold water on them. Even a man like shit has dogs to eat him. Ivy's face changed drastically, and Jason quickly woke up and hung up the phone. Raina, don't say that. I have a heart too, and it will hurt. There are already so many proofs that I love you. Do I have to say it to you over and over again? His handsome face, now showing a wronged and compromising look, was indeed moving. But I was no longer the Raina who would soften for him countless times. Now, I just listened with disdain, without a ripple in my heart. Raina, we've been through so many years together. The cruise trip was supposed to be romantic and beautiful. It was only because we hit a reef that it turned out like this. But that's still my promise to you. I accompanied you on the trip I promised. I'll also make up for the wedding I promised. He said affectionately, Raina, love is always feeling indebted. I always feel I owe you, so I want to compensate you better. I've already discussed with my parents, my family will pay for the wedding, and we'll have a grand one so that all friends and family know about our relationship, okay? I retorted, Jason, do you really think I'm just throwing a tantrum? I hate puffball skirts, I hate Ivy, and I hate you for being involved with her, unclean. Don't use the same tricks you use on Ivy on me, it's disgusting. While speaking, Jason's phone kept buzzing. It was Ivy calling. I glanced at it. The call background was a photo of them cheek to cheek in couple outfits, seemingly on the cruise ship's lifeboat. Answer it. Or your little lover will get anxious and make a scene. Jason looked helpless as he answered, but his hand movements were not slow, even a bit eager. Ivy said, Jason, I'm on the rooftop now. If you say one wrong word, I'll jump from here and make you regret it for life. What are you doing looking for Raina? Didn't you say you only love me? For you, I've compromised to this extent. I've never been a third party in my life. If it weren't for your mom refusing, I should be the one marrying you. Her voice was already tearful. If you let me down again, I might as well die. As she spoke, she pretended to take a few steps forward. Jason's eyes were fixed on the screen. Ivy, don't be impulsive. Listen to me, come down first, I'll come to you right away. The call was still on, but he didn't even have time to grab his coat and rushed out the door. When he reached the corridor, he turned back to ask me, Raina, I have to go see her, otherwise, something big will happen, you. I mocked, stop acting here. If you don't go see your little lover, and she really jumps, it would be my fault. Jason hurried down the stairs in a few strides. I closed the door and counted the time. 1 minute, 2 minutes. Jason's phone rang, not from Ivy, but from Charles. Why am I being asked to resign? Just because of that connected person? I've been with the company for so many years, even if I have no merits, I have hard work. If you fire me, how will the employees below see it? This is chilling. Even through several floors, I could hear Jason's angry shouts and questions. After a few seconds, he said confidently, I know. It must be Raina, right? On the day she resigned, she stayed in your office for so long, it must be for this. Yes, I cheated and betrayed her, but I didn't do anything wrong to her. He walked back step by step, his voice getting closer to me. I gave her the wedding she wanted, I gave her the trip she wanted. The miscarriage was just bad luck. Isn't it enough that she made a scene with me? Does she have to bring it to the company? Raina, come out. Explain yourself. I gave you my heart, and you still want to ruin me? He banged on the door hard. The door of the old house was a steel security door. After I locked it, Jason couldn't break in and could only shout for me to open the door outside. I put on my headphones and played good luck. Jason eventually resigned. That day, I went to the company for the final handover. Charles tried to retain me. Jason is gone, you don't have to leave. Jason heard it and became even angrier. Raina, you've been avoiding me for so many days, and I still caught you? He put down the box in his hand and rushed towards me aggressively. You resigned yourself and want to drag me down with you, right? Even at this time, you're still bad-mouthing me to Charles. He deliberately shouted loudly, looking like he was going to make a scene. Charles looked at me with a headache, and after getting my consent, he had the secretary project the surveillance video on the screen in the center of the office. Ivy and Jason were kissing passionately on the company rooftop, inseparable. The surveillance time was 4:30 p.m. last Tuesday, during work hours. Taking the company's money and using work time to be with your lover on the rooftop. Jason, I originally wanted to save you some face, but you insisted on making it big. There are more, but I don't want to show them to avoid dirtying everyone's eyes. Charles sighed, and the secretary understood, immediately pulling up the attendance records. In the past 6 months, you've only come to the company for 20 days, and each time you were late and left early. There are also many records of embezzlement in your business trip expense reports. Jason, you don't deserve to be the deputy director of the marketing department. It's better to step down and let someone more capable take over. Before, I was considering Raina's face, and if I fired you, he would have a knot in his heart. It's not easy to find someone as talented as Raina, so we could tolerate it. Now, it seems I don't need to tolerate it anymore. Jason's face was pale, and he was at a loss, facing everyone's gazes: disdain, contempt, mockery. But he still stubbornly threatened me. Raina, you're so ruthless, just for the divorce, right? Let me tell you, the more you do this, the more I won't agree to the divorce. I had anticipated this and said, then see you in court. I hope you're willing to lose face in front of everyone. That night, Jason's parents rushed to Suching to find me. Raina, you lost your parents at a young age, and after you and Jason fell in love and got married, we treated you like our own daughter. Jason's mother held a teacup, acting like an elder, and said to me, Jason is shameless and went astray, but we, as his parents, can discipline him. Don't keep mentioning divorce. Without some tolerance, life can't go on. I didn't respond, and she felt even more that she was right. You see, the invitations for the wedding have been sent out, and all the neighbors know that our family is having a happy event. Now, there are only 2 days left until Sunday, and you say you're not going through with the divorce. Not to mention the money spent can't be recovered. Where do we, as elders, put our face? Looking up, I carefully observed Jason's mother. She looked like Jason, with the same thick skin. I originally thought she would at least pretend to persuade me, but she revealed her true colors after just a few words. The breakdown of my relationship with Jason and his infidelity didn't matter. What mattered most was her face. Jason's father said little, sitting aside but clearly supporting her. These words were probably discussed by Jason and them to make me obediently accept the flawed marriage and the green hat on my head. In the past, I thought Jason's parents truly cared for me. Jason's mother hand-knitted sweaters and scarves. Jason had them, and I had an identical set. She didn't understand jewelry or jade, and bought a bunch of fakes online to give me. I just took it as her kindness and never exposed it. It wasn't until recently that I accidentally learned that the sweaters and scarves were bought from her distant relatives in the countryside. After Jason's mother moved to the city, she acted like a city lady and was unwilling to knit sweaters by hand anymore. And those fake jades were bought online for 19.9 yuan each. She told me they were treasures worth tens of thousands, confident that I wouldn't expose her. Doesn't Ivy really want to get married? You should persuade Jason to sign the divorce quickly so he can be with his true love and have a happy marriage. Jason's father firmly said, no. Jason's mother raised her eyes, her voice sharp. That woman Ivy, interfering in someone else's marriage, is obviously not a good person. How can such a disreputable woman enter our Pei family? She smiled at me. Raina, we watched you grow up, and you have so many years of relationship with Jason. We trust you. They had just moved from the countryside to Haicheng, but they already had the airs of a prestigious family. Then we have nothing more to say. See you in court. I no longer considered them and pushed them out of the house, leaving them in the dark corridor. The day before the wedding, Jason came to deliver the invitation to me. He said he and Ivy were getting married and hoped I could attend as a friend to bless them. This way, it could also prove that we were divorcing amicably, and he hadn't behaved immorally. In exchange, he would sign the divorce agreement and leave the house in Haicheng to me. It had only been a few days since we last met, but he looked haggard and thin, as if he had been through years. The prepared wedding ceremony can't be wasted, my mom said to let Ivy take over. But Raina, in my heart, I still want you. When I got closer, I could smell the alcohol on him. Because of work, Jason would drink at dinners. But I hated the smell of alcohol the most. After marriage, whenever he needed to drink, he would either book a room to sleep outside or stand in the cold wind for an hour to dissipate the smell before daring to come in. Later, when he and Ivy became true lovers, he didn't come home even more. Sometimes when he came home, it was because Ivy despised the smell of alcohol on him and drove him out. He was no longer the man who would stand in the wind just for a word from me. But today, the smell of alcohol on him wasn't strong, obviously dissipated. But I was no longer moved by his thoughtfulness. Jason asked, "Raina, what do I have to do to get your forgiveness? Should it have been me who died on the cruise ship, not the unborn child?" His expression was painful and conflicted, with bloodshot eyes. But through those eyes, I saw his impatient look before the cruise ship sank. In front of so many people, he pointed to the trembling Ivy and told the rescuers, "This is my wife, she's pregnant and needs priority rescue." While I, the one who was truly pregnant, was left in danger. Shouting and pleading only got me an unhappy glance. "It's just soaking in water, you can swim and have a life jacket, you won't die." Ivy is afraid of water, if she goes down, she'll probably be scared sick. Soaking in the cold seawater, I felt the child leaving me bit by bit. Fear and despair enveloped me, making me almost want to untie the life jacket and sink into the sea. But I survived, with an unyielding determination. On the wedding day, I arrived as scheduled. Jason was waiting for me in the changing room. When I went in, he handed me a large bag containing that puffball skirt-style wedding dress. I threw it into the trash, and it was taken away by the garbage truck, but Jason retrieved it, cleaned it, repaired it, and brought it here. "Raina, I know you don't like this one. But you look really good in it. If we could start over, would you be willing to wear it and marry me?" He looked at me with anticipation, begging me to put it on. I looked at him indifferently, not even moving a finger. "Yes, you don't like this wedding dress, I can't force you." He sighed, and his whole person slumped. "Raina, after you left, I realized that my life is full of your shadows. I can't live without you anymore. By the wash basin in the morning, it's the shadow of you shaving for me, in the kitchen, it's the shadow of you busily preparing a feast, in the wardrobe, the neatly arranged and matched suits are the shadow of your thoughtful care for me. Only now do I understand that my feelings for Ivy were just a momentary burst of hormones, while being with you is the steady flow of life." He looked at me self-mockingly. "Is it too late?" Jason still didn't get my answer. He was stunned for a long time, with layers of sadness in his eyes. "Raina, I also bought that silk wedding dress you really liked. I know you won't wear it for me again in this life, but I hope this can be the last memory of our love. Can you forgive me? Forgive my betrayal and the hurt I caused you." I was a bit impatient. "I can't forgive you. Jason, if you invited me here just to say these things, then forget it. Let's wait for the court's decision." Jason woke up as if from a dream, smiling bitterly, and took out the signed divorce agreement from the other side. "Raina, I didn't expect you to be in such a hurry. You don't even leave me time to reminisce." I stopped and turned back, saying seriously, "Jason, from the moment you betrayed me, there was no past between us to talk about." He suddenly raised his voice hoarse. "That wedding dress is in the changing room next door. Do you want to go see it?" "No, there's no need." As I walked out of the changing room, Ivy was standing by the door in her wedding dress, seemingly eavesdropping. "Are you seducing my Mr. Jason again? You're already divorced, stop lingering here. I'm the bride today." She held her head high, wearing that silk wedding dress. "I found this wedding dress in the changing room next door. It must be a surprise from Mr. Jason. This is much more exquisite than the previous one." She lifted her skirt and walked past me. "Don't block the way, doesn't an ex-wife feel awkward coming to such an occasion?" I looked back. In the changing room behind, Jason was looking at that silk wedding dress with an amazed expression. But this time, there was no Ivy in his eyes. The wedding started smoothly. Jason's parents were itching with hatred but helpless. For them, having no bride at the wedding was more serious than marrying Ivy. "Mr. Jason, are you willing to marry Ms. Ivy, for better or for worse, to love and respect her?" Jason's eyes passed over Ivy's shoulder and looked at me sitting in the corner. I do. When it was Ivy's turn, she said hatefully, I don't. I'm not marrying. Jason, you're a bastard. In her other hand, she held a fruit knife and stabbed Jason without hesitation. The scene was in chaos. Jason's parents were so terrified they almost fainted. Ivy's hands were covered in blood, but she showed a satisfied smile. Jason, I told you, I want true love. You deceived me so badly, why should you be happy? Her expression reminded me of 2 hours ago. After Ivy came out of the changing room where Jason was, she found me. Why is there no love in Jason's eyes when he looks at me? Why does he look at me as if he's looking at you? I opened my phone and played a recording for her. It was what Jason said in the small apartment in Sechin. He swore that with Ivy, it was just physical interaction, not true love. What does he take me for? I didn't answer but told her, the tattoo on Jason's abs is the abbreviation of my name. I once thought that was true love too. In fact, Jason was just a fire pit. The shock and anger on Ivy's face couldn't be hidden. She bit her lip and clenched her fists. He's been lying to me all along. He said you were just a nominal couple and never loved you. For him, I was pointed at and called a third party by so many people, and even endured that pair of neurotic parents, only to end up like this? My love had already sunk to the bottom of the sea, but what Ivy thought was true love. It was just sea foam. Pulling my thoughts back to the wedding scene, the pure white romantic wedding had changed its appearance. The police who arrived took away the assailant Ivy, and Jason was also sent to the hospital. I turned around, and a message from the convoy popped up on my phone. Next month, going to Tibet via Route 318, are you going? I thought again of the first time I went to Tibet. The golden mountains under the sun, the vast world. I left love and hate on the vast plateau, taking only the determination to leave. Love sank to the bottom of the sea with the cruise ship, and I was rescued alone. I opened the phone that had been vibrating all the way, and dozens of missed calls from Jason popped up. I took out the SIM card and put it into the backup phone. Along with this marriage that started with youthful infatuation, mutual support, and the 7-year itch, I turned it off. Now, stepping on Route 318 again, I also seemed to reboot and be reborn.